Hello and welcome back to video number 2 of this channel, Steady Venture Side. In this video today, you'll be seeing the amateur efforts, if maybe even not amateur, what's before amateur, novice efforts of being a videographer on these projects that I'm working on. I do quite a few projects, and this project just so happens to be one of my harebrained ideas to rebuild an engine. And this is a latter portion of that project that I didn't start videoing anything until the last bits of this project. As you can tell, I'm reinstalling the interior parts after I've detailed everything, vacuumed everything, cleaned the carpets, cleaned the mats, cleaned the seats. The engine has been installed. If you stick to the end, oh wait, whenever I do the timeline, yeah, struggle city here. I was trying to figure out how people video themselves doing these things, and it is not easy. Not easy at all. The focus was out, the tripod was falling over. I could only use one hand. I didn't have any attachments or you know, straps to hold it onto my head, or I didn't know what I was doing. So, like I said in last week's video, you're going to be along for the ride in seeing how this endeavor pans out. And oh, sometimes I just have to chuckle at myself. I think the camera falls over. Oh, it did earlier already. Trying to find the hole for that clip. Yeah, I would say through the whole engine build, I definitely did not do it by myself. I had an actual mechanic walk me through how to do it. Very kind of him to do. And I would say that detailing is my forte when it comes to rebuilding an engine versus cleaning something. This is definitely more my domain. And yet, any person that installs interiors for a living would just be cringing at my struggle. At this point, I enlisted the help of someone else to hold the camera while I try to fit this piece on. And it was not easy. There was another, on the other side, I actually cut myself, so that was not pleasant, but, it just comes with working with your hands. You're going to get some scrapes and bruises and broken blood vessels and stuff like that. So I really did enjoy this, though. That's the part that still, I don't know. I don't know how to put it to words. There is the most recent cut. Figuring out how to put the panels in. There were like 3 connection points that all had to align at the same time. And then just my luck, of course, because this is not my day job. This is a side project, to just a hobby, to have fun, maintain my sanity. I really like projects that have tangible, visible, very apparent checkpoints and finish lines. And this project, all in all, took me about 2 years. A friend of mine heard that I was interested in possibly taking on the challenge of rebuilding an engine just to better understand how engines work. And, I like fixing things and wrenching on things from time to time. Definitely not professional, definitely never been educated in any formal sense, but was willing to give it a try. And 2 years later, lots of frustration involved in this process. But the people that helped me were very patient, and I was tempted to throw in the towel and give up more than once. Let's just say far more than once. Whether it be a bolt that I had stripped in the engine block or that needed to be remilled, or the expense, or the time it would take. Man, sometimes I would order a part that I knew was needed, and then it would arrive and I would install it only to find out that another part was needed. And so then it was another 2-week shipping delay and more money and frustration because I had the time to work on it, but because I couldn't, this being my first time rebuilding an engine and flipping a car, uh, it's it just felt like it took forever, and I didn't have a clear progression about how to do it one step at a time. It was just kind of figure it out as I went, and it was very frustrating. I like clear plans and clear clear progression of steps, and if I could have, I would have ordered every single part ahead of time, had every single part sitting there ready to go, just waiting to be installed from the get-go. But that was not the case. Anyway, back to the guy the friend of mine, just so happened the timing was perfect for this. He had learned that I wanted to figure out how to rebuild an engine, and no more than 2 weeks later, this was his Honda Civic, and it had been overheating, but he was just kinda just gonna run it as much as he could. There was a crack in the catalytic converter, there was a crack in the intake manifold, like, it was just mess after mess, and this car was going downhill. It's a 1999 Honda Civic EX, automatic transmission, four-door sedan, and I just think Hondas and Toyotas are known, especially in that era, for their reliability, and it has well over, I think it has 221,000 miles. So he was on a highway about 25 minutes away from my house when his car finally gave up the ghost, finally went kaput. And he called me up and said, "Hey, instead of me getting this towed to a junkyard, do you want it?" And I was like, can't pass up an offer like that. When the opportunity came, you gotta take it. So he had the tow driver drop it off at my dad's shed here. My dad lets me use um, his third bay for my car stuff. Very generous of him. And sometimes he gets annoyed with how much stuff I put in there, but um, he's supportive of my hobbies, which is very nice. Anyway, guy dropped it off. The tow company had it dropped off here, and I started taking it off. I knew that the engine was overheated and likely a warped head, so I just started taking bolts out little by little. At some point, I'm gonna put a collection of videos and photos of this project because, like I said, I didn't do the videography stuff early on. I wasn't really into that at the time. Plus, it was just a bit overwhelming for me to try to figure out how to rebuild an engine in and of itself, as opposed to figuring out how to rebuild an engine and figuring out how to video a project all at the same time. That would have been a bit overwhelming for me. So I did take pictures though, so I will compile some of those in a future video so you can see more of the project. But uh, signed it over to me, did the good old dollar transaction to get the title in my name, and I registered it as a non-running vehicle and had it in my name. Went from there. So that was very fortuitous, and I had to take the opportunity. Granted, I've learned about a little bit about myself that I often get myself into big projects very ambitiously, and then about halfway through, I really start to question things like, what was I thinking? But then, I can't just give up. But I did admit earlier on that I really wanted to give up at some points, but just couldn't bring myself to do it, whether it be the amount of money I'd already put in, because getting the engine resurfaced, the block in the head resurfaced, and the uh, in valves to seat properly, like making sure that there were no cracks and everything. That was $2,000 at a local shop. Jeez, I couldn't just just if I had quit, all of that would have been for nothing. It would have all just gone to the junkyard, and that would not have been cool. So, uh, there were times when my frustrations did get the better of me, and instead of quitting, I just gave myself like a month or two break from working on anything related to it because I was just too mad, too mad with how it was going, expectations versus reality. So that was a definite progression for me, is very ambitious, took the opportunity, halfway through, definitely questioning my life decisions. Couldn't quite give up, but took plenty of breaks. That's maybe one reason why, one reason that factored into why it took 2 years overall to get this project finished. But also, uh, the person that was helping, well, the two people that were helping me, one of the main guy that helped me do the um, engine rebuild itself, we'll call him Z for all intents and purposes. He was volunteering his time and expertise, which was again very, very generous of him, but he valued my initiative and my desire to learn about cars. Um, so I was very fortunate to have his help, and also my work schedule didn't quite allow for me to go and work on it every single day, so I could maybe work on it once a week if he was also available. So it just took time, you know? But I learned a ton along the way. And that, I think, was kind of the driving factor for me in wanting to do this project at all. Is, like I said, I wanted to learn about engine components. I wanted to learn, how does a car actually work? What is this part called? What does this do? Uh, does this, which direction does this part help the fuel to go? Or is this part of the intake or the exhaust or the fuel pump or whatever? And I learned all those things from hands-on doing, not just textbook knowledge, but from getting in there, making mistakes, plenty of mistakes. All the rookie mistakes you can think of, I made them. Oh my goodness, buying the wrong parts, having to send it back, damaging things, over tightening things, having to redo it. And I love watching the Fab Rats YouTube channel. And I love what Paul says a lot. He says, we did it right because we did it twice. in, in some cases, I did it more than twice. But anyway, it's all part of the experience, and I definitely learn more by hands-on than I do from textbook learning. So, and I don't know if there's a study on this of any kind, but I would assume just from my own lived experience that experiencing something and experiencing it going wrong is almost all that more informative and educational than having everything go perfectly all the time. So, because when it goes wrong, you got to do some troubleshooting and figure out, why did this go south? Why did this happen? And what do I need to do to make it go better, or at least prevent it from happening again? Get it in right this time, whatever it might be. Ready to are. Like this. And cannot tell you how many YouTube videos I watched either. In fact, it happened so many times that I did just for kicks and giggles, I bought myself a certified YouTube mechanic sticker. But I don't know. I just There's something about it that keeps me coming back. And just today I was looking at another project car, wondering, has it been long enough since I did this one that I'm revived enough to take on another, or not? Did I What lessons did I learn? Did I learn the lesson of never do this again, or did I learn the lesson of do it a little smoother next time? Anyway, my apologies for getting so distractible during these, but sometimes I'll start making a comment and then see something come up on the screen, and feel like I have to comment on that before I go any further. But earlier I mentioned that if you would stick around to the end, you could hear the engine start. Uh, Proper lifting technique there. For save my back. Anyway, but when I do these time lapse things, to hear the little squirrel chipmunk voice is not pleasant. So unfortunately, you won't be able to hear when I uh, crank the engine over in this video. Again, all of this is a total test and experiment and huge learning curve. Anything you see in here is a learning curve, right? With seat bolts, for example, that you see me screwing in right now, I started by hand. I learned this the hard way, trust me. You always start threading a bolt by hand and then use the impact gun. That little tool that I just had, the drill, is a small wireless impact gun. So it helps tighten the bolts once you've gotten them started in the proper threads, right? Because if you cross thread or the bolt threads don't align, that's how problems occur and make a huge headache. So after I would start any and every bolt ever from now on in my entire life, I'm going to start by hand. I don't care what anybody says. Again, I've learned the hard way. I'm going to start them all by hand before applying any power tools to it whatsoever. And then something I learned with these seat bolts is they have specific, what are called torque specs or torque specifications, to where you have to use a torque wrench that can measure the pounds per foot or pounds per inch. Pounds per inch are really tiny. See, this is the torque wrench. Not the fanciest one, but good enough. And you set it manually by turning the dial at the bottom to whatever forum manual that I could find would tell me the number needed to be. So I don't remember off the top of my head at this point what it was, but let's say hypothetically that it was 67 foot-pounds of torque. Then I would set this wrench, I would set the settings accordingly, and then finalize the tightening of these bolts until that little wrench did a specific click, at which point then you would know that it was a safe enough, tight enough. You have to do the same with a handful of bolts. Some bolts, it doesn't matter what the torque spec is, but others, for example, safety related, seats, seat belts, uh, certain engine components, bolts definitely need specific torque specs to be known and followed. So I learned that through this process. Here I'm trying to put in the center console. I cleaned all of these, removed them in the first place, cleaned them all. I didn't have to do any transmission work on this. The transmission was okay enough. I did add some high mileage transmission fluid, automatic transmission fluid, ATF. That's where I turned it on so I could move the shifting stick to fit that piece in. And struggle because I actually had to put it in a different order. That's why I was struggling here. Anybody that does interior detailing is so cringing at every effort I make, but